Welcome to Flourish. I'm Diane Planidin, and you're in the right place if you're ready to create an inspired life. And we do so by working on our own personal development, so we can be strong role models for those we love and mentor, and strong for our own personal well-being, our own peace of mind. Today, I'm super excited to add a little bit of a science to all of this talk we've been having for the last couple of weeks on Zig Ziglar's motivational book, See You at the Top. And the last chapter was the secret ingredient, all about desire and how it's super important in order to accomplish what you set out to do. And for that, I decided to choose this book called The Molecule of More. And it is written by Daniel Lieberman and Michael Long. How a single chemical in your brain drives love, sex, and creativity and will determine the fate of the human race. How exciting is that? Well, these two gentlemen have really laid out for us the science behind how we come to make decisions. I'm not going to give it all away. We're going to go by this chapter by chapter each week. And the reason I do that on a book is because you don't get everything out of a book out of a little 10-minute summary, out of a little snippet. Books are created to digest, to reflect upon, and enjoy. That is how I get the most out of a book, and sometimes I read it more than once. Sometimes I go back to it and I reference it again. You really need to digest this information and to inform yourself, to gain that knowledge. That's why I do this. And I'm so excited that so many people give me excellent feedback on my methodology here in order to share how to create a more inspired life. Because us humans, we're fascinating. We are fascinating creatures. So let's begin. Here's how they introduce the book to us. Up versus down. Look down. What do you see? Your hands, your desk, the floor, maybe a cup of coffee? What do they have in common? They are things you can touch, things that are within your reach. Now look up. What do you see? The ceiling, maybe pictures on the wall, trees, houses, buildings, clouds, whatever's in the distance. What do they have in common? To reach them, you have to plan, think, calculate. Even if it's only a little, it still requires some coordinated effort. Unlike what we see when we look down, the realm of up shows us things that we have to think about and work for in order to get. That's far more exciting, isn't it? Yes. This distinction is the gateway between two wildly different ways of thinking, two utterly different ways of dealing with the world. In your brain, the down world is managed by a handful of chemicals. Neurotransmitters, they're called, that let you experience satisfaction and joy, whatever you have in the here and now. But when you turn your attention to the world of up, your brain relies on a different chemical, a single molecule that not only allows you to move beyond the realm of what's at your fingertips, but also motivates you to pursue, to control, and to possess the world beyond your immediate grasp. It drives you to seek out those things far away, both physical things and things you cannot see, such as knowledge, love, and power. Whether it's reaching across the table, flying to the moon, or worshiping a god beyond space and time, this chemical gives us command over every distance, whether geographical or intellectual. This is the key. It is different. It makes you desire what you don't have yet and drives you to seek new things. It rewards you when you obey it and makes you suffer when you don't. It is the source of creativity and further along the spectrum, madness. It is the key to addiction and the path to recovery. It is the bit of biology that makes an ambitious executive sacrifice everything in pursuit of success. I love that. It is the key to addiction, but also the path to recovery. So if you are wondering how you're going to change your life and reset your mindset, this little up chemical can make a difference. Here we go. They say it is why we look into the sky for redemption and God. It is why heaven is above the earth, is above and the earth is below. It is fuel for the motor of our dreams. It is the source of our despair when we fail. It is why we seek and succeed. It is why we discover and prosper. It's also why we are never happy for very long. It's the multi-purpose device for your brain. And this is it. This is it. This is how we function. To your brain, that single molecule is the ultimate multi-purpose device, urging us through thousands of neurochemical processes to move beyond the pleasure of just being into exploring the universe of possibilities that come when we imagine. Mammals, reptiles, birds, and fish all have this chemical inside their brains, but no creature has more of it than a human being. It is a blessing and a curse, a motivation and a reward. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, plus a single nitrogen atom. It is simple in form and complex in result. This is dopamine and narrates no less than the story of human behavior. And if you want to feel it right now, just look up. What is out of your reach that you really want to strive towards? This might be the key. So they begin the book on chapter 1, all about love. Oh, I thought, ooh, we're going to start out spicy now, aren't we? They begin by telling us what dopamine is and when it was discovered. It was discovered in 1957 by Kathleen Montague in a London hospital called Runwell. Initially, it was simply seen as a way for the body to produce a chemical called norepinephrine, which is what adrenaline is called when it is found in the brain. And there's a reason I'm giving you a little bit of the scientific background here, so bear with me. So it was considered, the pleasure molecule, and the pathway that dopamine producing cells take through the brain was named the reward circuit. And then they tested people with, artificial drugs and giving them artificial forms of dopamine. But then dopamine, they discovered, isn't about pleasure at all. Dopamine delivers a feeling much more influential. Understanding dopamine turns out to be the key to explaining that even predicting behavior across a spectacular range of human endeavors, creating art, literature, and music, seeking success, discovering new worlds and new laws of nature, thinking about God, and falling in love. It delivers a feeling much more influential. And then, people started testing this drug with monkeys and rewards and seeing how people are triggered, how people react, why they do so, and why this dopamine is so powerful. And it turns out that it's not the marker of pleasure, it's a reaction to the unexpected, to possibility, to anticipation. As human beings, we get dopamine rush from similar, promising surprises, anticipation, like a sweet little surprise. Like, have you ever thought about planning a trip on vacation, planning a picnic, planning a beautiful dinner, and you're anticipating the excitement and the love and the warmth and the joy and the peacefulness and the serenity? That's dopamine kicking in, right? It's not the actual trip that you take. So they go on to say when things like that happen, when you're anticipating, a little excitement, when you run into somebody you used to have a crush on or flirting or something to that effect, when these things become regular events, their novelty fades and so does the dopamine rush. And a little sweet note or a long email or chance encounter won't bring the same feeling. So this simple idea provides a chemical explanation for an age-old question. Why does love fade? Our brains are programmed to crave the unexpected and thus to look to the future, where every exciting possibility begins. But when anything, including love, becomes familiar, that excitement slips away and new things draw our attention. Yeah. That anticipation goes away because now it's familiar, right? They say, in fact, the mere possibility of a reward prediction error is enough for dopamine to swing into action. Imagine you're walking to work on a familiar street, one you've traveled many times before. All of a sudden, you notice a new bakery is open, one you've never seen. You immediately want to go in and see what they have. That's dopamine taking charge. And it produces a feeling different from enjoying how something tastes, feels, or looks. It's the pleasure of anticipation, the possibility of something unfamiliar and better. You're excited about the bakery, yet you haven't eaten any of their pastries, sampled any of their coffee, or even seen how it looks inside. That's dopamine in action. And then you go inside and you order a coffee and a croissant, and it's the best you've ever had, and you love it. And you make that your daily ritual. I am stopping there every day. This is so exciting. I can hardly wait. And over time, it wears off because it's not new anymore. It's not exciting. And dare I say, I'm not a scientist, but that could be because then it becomes familiar. It's not exciting anymore to learn how to ride a bike because now you know. It's not exciting anymore to have that cup of coffee because now you know what it tastes like. But you can use that to your own personal power. If something is so familiar in your life that you know what it makes you feel like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, do you really need to consume it, to eat it, to do it? No. Our imagination can do that for us, right? Here we go. They go on to say, it wasn't coffee and croissant that changed. It was your expectation. Dopamine's job and ability to idealize the unknown came to an end. So dopamine shut down. Passion rises when we dream of a world of possibility and fades when we are confronted by reality. When the god or goddesses of love beckoning you to the boudoir becomes a sleepy spouse, the nature of love, the reason to stay, must change from dopamageric dreams to something else. Well, what? One brain, two worlds. John Douglas Pettigrew, who's professor of physiology at University of Queensland, Australia, became the first person to clarify how the brain creates a three-dimensional map of the world. That sounds far removed from passionate relationships, but it would turn out to be a key concept from explaining dopamine and love. Pettigrew found that the brain manages the external world by dividing it into separate regions, the peripersonal and the extrapersonal, basically near and far. Peripersonal space includes whatever is in arm's reach, things you can control right now by using your hands. That's the down, right? And extrapersonal space refers to everything else, whatever else you can't touch. Move beyond your arm's reach, whether it's 3 feet or 3 million miles away. This is the realm of possibility. The defining characteristics of things in the extra-personal space, beyond your reach. To get them requires effort, time, and in many cases, planning. By contrast, anything in the peripersonal space can be experienced in the here and now. Those experiences are immediate. We touch, taste, hold, and squeeze. We feel happiness, sadness, anger, and joy. Yes, this brings us to a clarifying fact of neurochemistry. The brain works one way in the peripersonal space and another way in the extrapersonal space. That is an amazing discovery on how people are designed. So things in the distance, things we don't have yet, cannot be used or consumed, only desired. Dopamine has a very specific job, maximizing resources that will be available to us in the future. The pursuit of better things. Think about that. Only desire. Last week, focus on your true desire. We now know the scientific reason behind that. I don't know if Zig Ziglar knew that. He felt it. He communicated it. He shared his wisdom. Now we know scientifically why that works. Your true desire is going to move you forward into success. However, there is a dark side. Yeah, the novelty that triggers dopamine doesn't go on forever. When it comes to love, the loss of passionate romance will always happen eventually, and then comes a choice. Aha. We can transition to a love that's fed by day to day appreciation of that other person in that here and now, or we can end the relationship and go in search of another roller coaster ride. Choosing the dopaminergic kick takes a little effort, but it ends fast, like the pleasure of eating a Twinkie. Love that lasts shifts the emphasis from anticipation to experience, from fantasy of anything being possible to engagement with reality and all its imperfections. The transition is difficult, and when the world presents an easy way out of a difficult task, we tend to take it. That's why, when the dopamine firing of early romance ends, many relationships end too. Early love, and I love this analogy, is a ride on a merry-go-round that sits at the foot of a bridge. That carousel can take you around and around on a beautiful trip as many times as you like, but it'll always leave you where you began. Each time the music stops and your feet are back on the ground, then you must make a choice to make one more whirl or cross the bridge to another, more enduring kind of love. And that's where it gets complicated because you need to know, is this love? Is this enduring love? Is it merely a passionate sort of situation? Are you really making a connection with another person? It takes time, it takes patience, it takes some work. And I would say it's really hard to make that distinction until you've tried to make it work, until you've tried to keep the flame burning. And do you do it because you want to? Do you do it because you know you're just maybe going through a hard time right now? And I'm not comparing this to, say, an abusive relationship. In my mind, that's a no brainer. Get out as fast as you can, whatever the case may be. That leopard's not changing any spots anytime soon. So that's not what they're talking about either. They're talking about enduring love and how it changes and how when we go for the quick dopamine hits again and again and again, and you get on that merry-go-round and you keep jumping off and getting back on, jumping off, getting back on, plant your feet where you're grounded and see what happens. And it's not always easy. Actually, it's never easy, is it? Right? So they go on to say, we revel in the passion, the focus, the excitement, the thrill of finding new love. The difference is that most of us figure out at some point that dopamine lies to us. We come to understand that the next beautiful woman or handsome man we see is probably not the key to satisfaction. And when they're referencing satisfaction, they are talking about Mick Jagger. I'm just saying. Here we go. The chemical keys to long-lasting love. From dopamine's point of view, having things is uninteresting. It's only getting things that matters. If you live under a bridge, dopamine makes you want a tent. If you live in a tent, dopamine makes you want a house. If you live in the most expensive mansion in the world, dopamine makes you want a castle on the moon. Dopamine has no standard for good and seeks no finish line. The dopamine circuits in the brain can be stimulated only by the possibility of whatever is shiny and new. Never mind how perfect things are at the moment. The dopamine motto is more, 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 more. And keep that in the back of your mind when, uh, you know, your wife comes home and she wants to redecorate the house. That's dopamine. Your husband comes home and he's like, wants to change careers. That's dopamine. It's super hard to just stay where you're planted, and it's not only love that makes that happen. Dopamine is one of the instigators of love, the source of the spark that sets off all that follows. But for love to continue beyond that stage, the nature of the love relationship has to change because the chemical symphony behind it changes. Dopamine isn't the pleasure molecule after all, it's the anticipation molecule. To enjoy the things we have as opposed to the things that are only possible, our brains must transition from future oriented dopamine to present oriented chemicals, a collection of neurotransmitters we call the here and now molecules. Most people have heard of the here and now. They include serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, your brain's version of morphine, and a class of chemicals called endocannabinoids, your brain's version of marijuana. As opposed to the pleasure of anticipation via dopamine, these chemicals give us pleasure from sensation and emotion. In fact, one of the endocannabinoid molecules is called anandamada, named after a Sanskrit word that means joy, bliss, and delight. Sanskrit's an ancient language, by the way. According to anthropologist Helen Fisher, early or passionate loves last only 12 to 18 months. After that, for a couple to remain attached to one another, they need to develop a different sort of love called compassionate love. Compassionate love is mediated by the here and now because it involves experiencing things that are happening right here, right now. You're with the one you love, so enjoy it. Be present. They talk about how, you're planning a trip, let's just say to go visit the Eiffel Tower. You've never been to Paris before. You're super excited. And then you get there and you're like, oh, is that all there is? You hear about this story with athletes that all they want is the green jacket or the big trophy, and they get it. And they're like, what? Is that all there is? I think it's fascinating and important and beautiful to understand. It's in the journey, it's in the pursuit that makes you happy. I did a whole episode on the pursuit of happiness, and this is yet another reinforcement, scientifically proven, that that's how you maintain happiness. That's how you maintain a relationship. That is how you stay with the one you love and you develop a compassionate love. That's why your mother wants you to wait until you're married. So, does mother really know best? Well, here's what they have to say. Waiting prolongs the most exciting phase of love. The bittersweet feeling of distance and denial are the business end of a chemical reaction. Passion deferred is passion sustained. If mom wants her daughter to get married, amplifying the passion is a good way to help things along. Dopamine tends to shut down once fantasy becomes reality, and dopamine is the driving chemical of romantic love. So, what would raise dopamine more? Agreeing to sex now or keeping it in the future? Mom knows the answer, even if we're only now learning why. Instincts, right? And that's why I love this, because somehow intuition, instincts, human nature, we've always known it, but now it's scientifically proven. Why? Are you fascinated about this? I am. And honestly, won't you just remind yourself about this every now and then when you're thinking, should I stay with him? Her? Should I? Have we lost the passion? Or are we just having a change in our chemical reaction to the relationship? Only you can know this. But when you're informed like this, doesn't it make more sense? It makes complete sense. that we are these amazing creature. Dopamine got the nickname the pleasure molecule based on experiments with addictive drugs. The drugs lit up dopamine circuits and test participants experienced euphoria. It seems simple until studies done with natural rewards, food for example, found that only unexpected rewards triggered dopamine release. Dopamine responded not to reward, but to reward prediction error, the actual reward minus the expected reward. That's why falling in love doesn't last forever. It can become compassionate love, which may not be the thrill that dopamine is, but it has the power to deliver happiness, long-term happiness, based on here and now neurotransmitters such as oxytocin, vasopressin, and endorphin. It's like our old favorite haunts, restaurants, shops, even cities. Our affection for them comes from taking pleasure in the familiar ambiance, the real physical nature of the place. We enjoy the familiar not for what it could become, but for what it is, the devil you know. That is the only stable basis for a long-term, satisfying relationship. Satisfying relationship. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter whose purpose is to maximize future rewards, starts us down a road to love. It revs our desires, illuminates our imagination, and draws us into relationship on an incandescent promise. But when it comes to love, dopamine is a place to begin, not to finish. It can never be satisfied. Dopamine can only say more. So as you study humans and human nature, and we bring this all together to understand why we do what we do as humans, why human nature is so fascinating and really needs further exploration. And that's what scientists are doing now. They're actually breaking it down. They're discovering the molecule of more, right? That's what the book is called, the molecule of more. When you understand this, take a moment, step back before you make a decision about the person you're with, the one you think you're falling out of love with. Maybe explore, sit with yourself. Are you reaching out something more? Or do you have what's planted right at your feet? Those acres of diamonds might be right under your feet. Think about it. Send me a note. Write it in the comments. Hit the subscribe. You don't want to miss the next chapter. This is fascinating stuff, and I'm bringing this to you as a regular human, trying to break down my interpretation of it. It's a lot to digest, and I give you a summary because guess what? I want you and all of us to live a more inspired life. I'll see you next week.